when a handsome but nerdy guy falls in love with a perfectionist girl who is his boss. However, the girl seems completely unaware of the guy's feelings and even considers him an unstable young man who just won love, due to their significant age difference. How does the story continue? Let's get straight to the plot of the film. This beautiful girl is named Sona, a career woman at a cosmetic marketing company. One day, she is asked to mentor a new employee at her company. Because of Sona's appearance and charisma, an employee named Hyun starts to like her. At that time, Hyun didn't dare to express his feelings to Sona because it seemed that she was the type of worker who prioritized her career. Hyun could only admire Sona in silence. Hyun's feelings for Sona had actually been kept inside for a long time. It all started when Sona was a guest lecturer at Hyun's university.
네, 그렇긴 한데 지금...
Hyun's single status at a mature age made his two older siblings very worried. Especially since all this time, Hyun didn't want to open his heart to women who wanted to get to know him. They asked Hyun to get a girlfriend by his birthday. Hyun was determined that, on his birthday next week, he would express all his feelings to the senior, who was none other than Song-ah. Hyun, who was gathering with friends and co-workers including Song-ah, tried to find the right moment to talk to her. However, before he could start the conversation, Song-ah excused herself after receiving a phone call from someone.
나 화장실 좀.
네.
Hyun, who was determined to express his feelings, secretly followed where Song-ah went until he ended up at a cow place. Hyun was shocked to find out that Song-ah was meeting her boyfriend, who turned out to be Jason, their boss at the company where they work. It turned out that the relationship between Song-ah and Jason had been going on for quite some time without their co-workers realizing it. This made Hyun feel so troubled that he couldn't sleep all night. Hyun felt awkward at the office, because now he understood why Song-ah always dressed up nicely, whenever she was called by Jason. With the turmoil he was feeling, Hyun then went to see his eldest brother, Jae-sung, who owns a bridal gallery. Hyun confided that he had given up on winning Song-ah's heart, because he felt that Song-ah was very happy in her relationship with Jason. Until when Hyun was about to leave his brother's place, he accidentally saw Jason coming to the gallery with another woman. It turned out that the two were there for a wedding dress fitting. This made Hyun furious because the woman he liked was being played by Jason. From that moment on, Hyun planned to win Song-ah's feelings away from Jason. The next day at the office, Hyun was infuriated when he found out about Jason's deceit, as he was planning to marry another woman in the next 3 months. Hyun would not allow Song-ah to always cling to Jason. In fact, so great was his hatred for that man, Hyun always looked at him with a face full of anger. Song-ah was puzzled by Hyun's sudden change in behavior towards his superior. Hyun, who didn't want to see Song-ah sad, wasn't yet brave enough to tell her the truth about what he knew regarding Jason.
그땐 못 참아요, 더는.
A month passed, and Hyun continued to hide Jason's flaws so that Song-ah wouldn't find out. However, as the days went by, Song-ah only grew more in love with Jason. Foolishly, she always believed the lies of that man. In the end, Hyun decided to show Song-ah Jason's behavior behind her back.
선배!
With a serious expression, Hyun asked Song-ah to meet him after work. He once showed her something that Song-ah had never expected before. Song-ah, who always considered Hyun as a child, felt a bit puzzled by Hyun's behavior because he suddenly acted all grown up. This made her a little scared and unwilling to respond to Hyun's request to meet. Hyun then wiped off Song-ah's lipstick and said that a woman like her shouldn't wear lipstick for a jerk like Jason. Driven by curiosity and never having seen Hyun act like a real man, she finally decided to meet Hyun, who was already waiting for her in the car. Hyun immediately took Song-ah to the gallery where his brother was. Hyun caught Hyun. While on the journey, Hyun couldn't hold back his anger towards Jason and kept bad-mouthing him in front of Song-ae. Song-ae was angry because she felt that Hyun had no right to talk about the faults of her beloved. However, Hyun, who no longer wanted to see Song-ae being played with, then said that he was fed up with seeing Song-ae always being oppressed by Jason because Song-ae is the girl he truly loves. Hearing those words, Song-ae instead assumed that Hyun's behavior was a form of jealousy after catching her dating Jason.
진짜 가만 안 둘 테니까.
Upon arriving at his sister's gallery, Hyun said that this place belonged to his family and that he actually came from a well-off family. In fact, Hyun didn't even need to work at the marketing company because that activity was just a pastime for him. Hearing this, Song-ae became even more confused about what Hyun was trying to show her. In a room that his sister had prepared, Hyun apologized for having to resort to this method with Song-ae. And shortly after, with her own eyes, Song-ae saw Jae-sin, the man she deeply loved, holding hands with another woman to try on wedding dresses. Seeing this reality, Song-ae tried to think positively and assumes that the woman Jae-sin brought was a family member or perhaps a relative. Frustrated with Song-ae's thoughts, Hyun said that he had already looked into the background of the woman Jae-sin was with, who turned out to be named Yoo-ju, the granddaughter of the owner of the company where they work. Even after being told the facts, Song-ae insisted that Jae-sin couldn't possibly betray her. Reluctantly, Jae-sin explained that he and the woman were going to get married in 2 months.
그게 지금 무슨 말이야?
At that moment, Song-ae intended to confront Jae-sin, but was immediately stopped by Jae-sin because if Song-ae did that, they would only reveal her own foolishness. Song-ae couldn't hold back her tears, and with full of anger, she asked Jae-sin what she should do. Jae-sin could only remain silent, as he didn't have an answer to Song-ae's question either. After Jae-sin and Yoo-ju left, Song-ae, feeling devastated, also left the gallery. Worried, Jae-sin then offered to take Song-ae home.
이러고 있어도 엄청 쫄았다고요, 지금.
However, it didn't matter. Song-ae continued to turn against Jae-sin and told him not to interfere in her personal matters anymore. She also asked Jae-sin not to get close or have hopes for her, because Song-ae would never like a man like Jae-sin. Jae-sin, upon hearing this, could only remain silent because once again, his love was unrequited.
하지마, 그딴 거.
Moving on to Jae-sin and Yoo-ju, because in reality, it turned out that Jae-sin didn't have any feelings for Yoo-ju, but if he ignored her, the woman would always act recklessly by attempting to harm herself. Jae-sin had no choice but to comply with all of Yoo-ju's requests, especially since his friend, who was none other than Yoo-ju's brother, also asked him to accept his sister.
그냥 네가 좀 받아주라.
Back to Jae-sin, even though he was treated harshly by Song-ae's words, Jae-sin still hoped that Song-ae would accept him. After the incident that night, Jae-sin's brother felt even more sorry for his brother's situation, realizing that he had deep feelings for Song-ae. As he was about to go home from work, amidst his confusion about finding the best solution to help Song-ae, suddenly someone called out to Jae-sin, and it turned out to be Song-ae himself. Song-ae's arrival was to ask what he should do to not feel too heartbroken over his argument with Jae-sin.
그래서 뭔데?
Hearing the sudden question from the woman he loves dearly, Hyun then said that the best solution he could suggest at the moment is for her to date him. Hyun's words made her feel awkward when she came to meet Bria. However, Hyun said that the plan was not in vain, because by Song-ae dating him, Jae-sin would feel heartbroken later on.
장난 아니에요. 이게 무슨 기회라고 생각하는 것도 아니고.
Song-ae, who still had feelings for Jae-sin, immediately left and said that she would handle her problems on her own. However, when she kept thinking about the fate of her relationship with Jae-sin, Song-ae couldn't find any answers at all, until at the office, Hyun asked again about his offer from last night. But at that time, Sona still ignored Hyun's question and just walked away. Till when she saw Jae-sin, Song-ae thought about what if she now admitted in front of everyone that she was Jae-sin's girlfriend. Not long after, she met Jae-won, Yoo-ju's brother, who is also the director of the company as well as Jae-sin's friend. Song-ae then thought about whether she should talk about her relationship with Jae-sin, which could lead to Jae-won being very angry with Jae-sin, thinking that he has been toying with his sister's feelings. However, for some reason, Song-ae didn't go through with it, as if everything she thought of wasn't enough to retaliate against Jae-sin for what he had done to her. Afterwards, Song-ae tried to avoid Jae-won, but her boss instructed her to work on a project at the cosmetics factory with Jae-won, accompanied by a colleague. There, the awkwardness was evident as Sona constantly tried to avoid Jae-won, making their colleague a bit suspicious that there might be something between them. Until one night, Song-ae, lost in thought, kept pondering her disbelief. Suddenly, she was startled by Jae-won's arrival, who noticed that Song-ae was always thinking about a way out of her problems. He once again offered advice, saying that there was no reason for Song-ae to be constantly downcast thinking about her relationship with Jae-sin. Because right now, Jae-sin is actually busy with his wedding plans with another woman.
진짜 정리할 마음이 있긴 해요? 아님
Hearing this, Song-ae became emotional, and said that this had nothing to do with Jae-sin at all. Even if she ends up getting hurt because she still hopes for Jae-sin, that is not Jae-sin's concern, because Jae-sin is just a stranger among them who will never understand the issues at hand. Hearing this, Jae-sin said that he does indeed like Song-ae, but that was not his main reason for suggesting they date. Because in the past, he had a similar experience to what Song-ae is going through now, and he kept hoping that the woman would come back after betraying him.
다른 사람한테 안 그래요.
After saying all that, Hyun left, and from that moment on, Hyun seemed to avoid and act indifferent towards Song-ae. Until when they both went home after dropping them off, Hyun didn't say a single word to Song-ae. Even when Song-ae asked to get off at the station, Hyun wasn't like he used to be. Now he immediately complied with Song-ae's request. This made Song-ae feel something because she felt ignored by Hyun, who was actually very handsome. Song-ae couldn't concentrate on her work, to the point where she forgot an important task related to her job of sending cosmetic stock to a mall. It turned out that Hyun had already taken care of everything.
평소에 잘하시니까 해드리는 거예요. 다음부터는 일찍 좀 주시고요.
Feeling indebted to Hyun, Song-ae thanked him for what he had done. Hyun replied that what he did was solely to repay the kindness of his senior, who always helped him when he faced problems at work. Hearing those words, Song-ae felt guilty, because all this time, she had always scolded and ignored Hyun's good intentions and actions. Song-ae wanted to ask Hyun to have dinner with her as a form of gratitude and apology.
그럼 저녁 먹을래?
Song-ae expressed that she had been constantly and deeply thinking about what she truly wanted after being betrayed by Hyun. She still couldn't believe that a good man like Hyun could betray her, and to this day, she hasn't found an answer regarding the uncertainty of her relationship with Hyun. Hyun suggested once again that Song-ae follow his advice to attempt dating him. Hearing that, Hyun asked not to discuss it any further, as she would end up hurting Hyun after her revenge against Jae-sin was completed.
들어줄게요.
After expressing what was in his heart, Hyun left, and not long after he was gone, So-a's courage emerged, and without hesitation, she immediately contacted Jae-sin to end their romantic relationship. So-ae said that she was fed up with Jae-sin, who never treated her specially. However, unexpectedly, Jae-sin was not far from where Song-ae was, and he immediately approached her in the car. He asked Song-ae why she suddenly wanted to break up with him. But Song-ae gave another reason, saying that she was fed up, because Jae-sin didn't want to make their relationship public at the office.
이유가 뻔하죠.
Jae-sin, realizing that Song-ae was hiding something, then asked if Song-ae had developed a close relationship with Jae-yun. Because he had just seen that the two of them were very close. Song-ae immediately responded and said that her relationship with Jae-sin was now.
최한승이야?
Jae-sin couldn't accept it, and then roughly grabbed Song-ae's hand, while continuously asking why Song-ae had left him. Song-ae, who was already disappointed, tried to fight back, and suddenly Jae-sin arrived and immediately released Jae-sin's grip. Even with a very sharp gaze, Jae-sin stared at Jae-sin, who kept urging Jae-sin to leave immediately.
네 상사로서 명령이야.
Unexpectedly, Jae-sin extended his hand to Song-ae, so that the girl would hold his hand and trust him. With a bit of hesitation, Song-ae seemed to try to trust Jae-sin, until finally, Song-ae dared to step forward with Jae-sin. Confidently, Jae-sin asked Jae-sin to leave the place immediately, especially since Song-ae didn't want to be with him. Jae-sin instead accused that Song-ae turned away from him because of Jae-sin's temptation. Of course, hearing that made Song-ae hate him even more, because Jae-sin still wouldn't admit his mistake. Firmly, Song-ae told Jae-sin that the relationship between the two of them was now over. She then left while holding Jae-sin's hand.
가세요, 그만.
After Jae-sin truly left, Song-ae immediately released his grip and apologized to Jae-sin, because now Jae-sin had to be involved in his affairs with Jae-sin. The next day, while Jae-sin was in the office basement, he received a message from Song-ae asking him to come to the cafe across from the company. Hyun quickly came, bringing Song-a's favorite coffee, and urged Song-a to take a break from work if last night's incident was still on her mind. However, Song-a said that she currently wanted to face her issues with Jae-sin and had to involve Kayun, who was pretending to be her boyfriend. Hearing that, Kayun actually said that it was very relieving for him because he could help his senior even though their status was just pretend boyfriend and girlfriend.
난 다행인데.
He asked to only show their fake closeness in front of Jae-sin. And surprisingly, the elevator doors opened, revealing Jae-sin standing there with a jealous look.
안 내릴 건가?
Even though the relationship between Kayun and Song-a was just pretend, Kayun, who actually had feelings for the girl, tried to be sweet to her, which made Song-a gradually start to see Kayun as a mature man. Meanwhile, Jae-sin, who was known for being quiet, became a bit arrogant after being rejected by Song-a.
어? 정아야.
Jae-sin, who still loved Song-a, asked her to come back to him and proposed that they get married soon. Song-a told him that she already knew about Jae-sin's lie, as he was about to marry Kayun's sister. At that moment, Jae-sin argued that he never loved Yoo-ju because his true feelings were only for Song-a.
결혼이란요?
우리 사이 밝히고 싶다고 했을 때
Not long after, Kayun came to take Song-a away, but Jae-sin instead pushed Kayun, leading to a fight. At that moment, Song-a, who had previously been very angry with Kayun for interfering in her personal matters, now apologized and thanked Kayun for his help. One day, Kayun accidentally saw Song-a with a friend about to enter an entertainment venue to relieve stress. Kayun, feeling happy, secretly followed Song-a, and when inside the bar, an unintended sweet moment was created between the two of them. Realizing Kayun was there, Song-a immediately left, as she felt something made her awkward when she was constantly watched by Kayun. Whether it was love or another feeling, one thing was clear. Opportunities began to arise for Kayun even though Song-a tried to avoid him.
근데 무슨 일이야? 친구들이랑 왔어?
Kayun remained undeterred, and by sheer chance, Song-a's friend invited Kayun to enjoy some Korean soju at a bar, and Kayun seized that opportunity to get closer to Song-a.
앞으로도 비밀 지키겠습니다. 목숨 걸고.
Because of that, Kayun always seemed happy, which made his two older siblings believe that Sika Kayun was in a relationship with a girl. Even when working, Kayun's face always appeared radiant, because he could always be close to the apple of his eye. When the two of them were about to get on the elevator, it turned out that Jae-sin and also Jo-in were already inside. Jo-in is Song-a's superior. He asked Song-a to join him and Jae-sin for lunch. Even though Song-a wanted to avoid Jae-sin as much as possible, when it came to work, Song-a couldn't refuse. During lunch, Jo-in indeed said that the reason he invited Song-a to lunch was actually because he truly wanted to inform her that she is very dedicated to the company, so much so that he plans to hand over the company in Paris to her.
예송아 씨, 해외 근무 관심 있죠?
After explaining his reason to Song-a, Jo-in excused himself because he had other matters to attend to. Meanwhile, Song-a and Jae-sin, who were left alone, found themselves in a rather cold atmosphere. Because she realized that, even if Jae-sin's betrayal wasn't uncovered, he would still maintain a relationship with her by sending her to Paris.
애초에 나한테 결혼 얘기도 할 생각 없었죠.
Back to Jae-yoon and Song-a, the closeness that had developed between them over the past few days could no longer remain intense, because Jae-sin's plans to be with Song-a had not yet been abandoned. At that time, Jae-sin announced that starting today, Song-a would be the mentor guiding Jae-yoon at the company because Song-a was assigned to a different team. Song-a tried to resist this because she felt that Jae-sin's decision to do so was solely out of jealousy towards Jae-yoon. Song-a herself had to accept the decision that Jae-sin had made. She also had to be willing to adapt to a new environment that was very different from before. Song-a, seeing Jae-yoon so busy, was a little worried, but Jae-yoon always tried to send messages to make Song-a feel not neglected. Until when it was time to go home, Song-a felt anxious again because she still hadn't met Jae-yoon. Song-a contacted Jae-yoon, but she didn't get a response from him. It turned out that Jaehyun was enjoying drinks given by the marketing division, and he did this because he was feeling stressed. This was because he had previously been approached by Jaehyun, who asked him to persuade Song-ah to move to Paris. It turned out that the job in Paris was something Song-ah had dreamed of for a long time. However, due to personal issues with Jaehyun, Song-ah rejected the offer. Jaehyun asked Jaehyun to convince Song-ah to accept the offer from the company.
송아한테 못 들었나 보네.
Jaehyun felt conflicted because, on one hand, he wanted to stay with Song-ah, but on the other hand, he also wanted to see Song-ah succeed as she had always dreamed. So when he was about to go home, Jaehyun, who was under the influence of alcohol, accidentally ran into Song-ah. Acting sweet as usual, Jaehyun approached Song-ah and immediately rested his head on her shoulder. When Jaehyun woke up the next morning, he was both shocked and embarrassed as he recalled the previous night's events, where he acted strangely in front of Song-ah like a child. Jaehyun even kept praising Song-ah as the most beautiful woman in the world. Feeling embarrassed, Jaehyun then went to Song-ah to apologize for his actions the night before. Song-ah, who had started to pay attention to Jaehyun, didn't mind the incident and shyly asked Jaehyun not to drink with his colleagues anymore, if it was just a condition for him to join their circle. Because Song-ah was confident in Jaehyun's abilities, which were already very suitable for his work. Jaehyun was so happy to hear Song-ah's concern, because it turned out that Song-ah had always been paying attention to him, even if it was just in terms of work. One day, because a cosmetic product was about to be released, Song-ah couldn't go home on time. Especially since there were several tasks she had to complete at that time. Realizing that Song-ah was working overtime, with full attention, Jaehyun returned to the office bringing food and drinks for Song-ah. Because of Jaehyun's sweet gesture, Song-ah was able to laugh, and after Jaehyun went home, Song-ah, who was still at the office, was visited by Jae-sin. There, Jae-sin then explained his reasons for marrying Hyoju. Because it was Jaehyun's request, considering Yoo-ju always attempted suicide, if her wish to marry Jae-sin was not fulfilled. Another reason was also revealed, because all this time, it was Jaehyun's family who had funded Jae-sin's education and helped him become as successful as he is now. Jae-sin also mentioned that he couldn't refuse the request from Jaehyun's family. And because of that, Jae-sin asked Song-ah to accept Jaehyun's offer to go to Paris, as it had nothing to do with him.
난 이 결혼할 수밖에 없어. 그쪽에서 버리지 않는 이상.
Of course, Jae-sin's words made Song Akinit aware of the heavy burden that Jae-sin had to bear. Song Akinit began to consider accepting the offer from Jaehyun. The next day, when the launch event for the new cosmetic product was held, one of the workers reported that the person appointed as the model was unable to attend. This situation forced Jae-sin and Song Akinit to quickly find someone who could replace the model. However, because time was running out, one of Song Akinit's colleagues eventually had the idea to make Hyun the replacement for the model who couldn't attend.
피부도 좋고 기력질도 뭐 하나 모델보다 빠지는 게 없는데.
Of course, Hyun refused because she felt she wasn't suitable to be a model. However, upon learning that all of this was Song Akinit's responsibility, Hyun finally agreed to be the backup model to help the woman he cared about. With a little makeover and makeup, Hyun, who was already handsome and charismatic, looked even more stunning like a professional model. Hyun's impromptu appearance as a model even made the guests present admire his handsome appearance. However, unexpectedly, trouble returned to Song Akinit, because Yoo-ju suddenly showed up, as the night before, she saw her ex-boyfriend approaching Song Akinit. At that time, Yoo-ju did nothing to Song-ae, because she didn't have any information about the relationship between Song-ae and Jae-sin. Nevertheless, Yoo-ju's arrival still made Song-ae feel a strong pressure, knowing that Yoo-ju really wanted Jae-sin.
우리 만났었죠.
To forget the events of that day, Song-ae went to her mother's house. Moreover, today was the anniversary of her late father's death. However, it turned out that the relationship between Song-ae and her mother was not harmonious, due to past events involving her late father. The scene shifts to the office, where at that time, Jae-sin received a call that the president director or Jaehyun's brother would be coming to their mall. Jae-sin asked Song-ae to prepare to welcome the president director. The president director was very aloof because he had a very unpredictable personality. It was shown, when two mall visitors were accused of being thieves, At that time, the president director casually asked both of them to confess who among them had stolen cosmetics from his mall. The president director even promised to give the cosmetics for free, as long as one of them confessed. However, when one of the visitors pointed to their friend, the president director broke his promise, which made Song-ae see it and realize that all this time, Jae-sin was dealing with a very dangerous person.
등에 칼부터 꽂는 게 인간의 습성이야.
Meanwhile, at the office, a problem occurred, namely the new product that was about to be released was mislabeled and needed to be quickly replaced with a new label. The time needed was only until the next day. Ka-yoon, knowing that it was Song-ae's mistake, took the initiative to ask her to go to the factory and replace the labels in question. However, it turned out that there were a lot of labels that needed to be replaced, and Ka-yoon was even assisted by 2 employees to get it done. However, until nightfall, Ka-yoon still hadn't finished the work, and Song-ae, feeling guilty, found out about it, because Ka-yoon went to the factory to replace the labels by herself. While replacing the labels, Ka-yoon was very happy when Song-ae contacted her to say thank you and mentioned that she had cancelled her trip to Paris. Upon hearing the news, Ka-yoon immediately smiled brightly and danced around out of sheer joy. And it turned out that Ka-yoon's behavior was just seen by Song-ae, who had actually followed Ka-yoon to the factory to help her. Of course, this instantly made Ka-yoon embarrassed because her silly antics were seen by Song-ae. While both of them were sticking product labels, time unexpectedly flew by so quickly. As night approached, a romantic moment occurred when Song-ae fell asleep and leaned directly on Ka-yoon's shoulder. Of course, this made Ka-yoon's heart beat even faster, and when Song-ae was about to wake up, Ka-yoon quickly went to his car to get a blanket. Of course, what woman wouldn't be touched by such gentle treatment, including Song-ae? Because of all the romantic gestures that Ka-yoon showed towards her, Song-ae then asked about the reason Ka-yoon liked her.
내가 왜 좋아?
Receiving the question he had been anticipating all this time, Ka-yoon answered that he had liked Song-ae for a long time, even when he was still in college, and when they met again at the company, those feelings deepened for Ka-yoon because he saw Song-ae's very interesting personality and her responsibility towards her work. Hearing the sincere words from Ka-yoon, with teary eyes, Song-ae replied that she was not as good a person as Ka-yoon imagined, and perhaps she was someone who was not worthy of Ka-yoon. For that reason, Song-ae couldn't accept Ka-yoon's feelings, which were too overwhelming for her. Song-ae was afraid that she might end up disappointing Ka-yoon.
다 그렇게 되는 것 같아.
Ka-yoon, who once again felt rejected, did not give up this time, saying that he would wait until Song-ae was ready to accept his sincere feelings. Meanwhile, in a different place, the heartbreak that Ka-yoon was feeling, because he could no longer be with Song-ae, was evident when he saw that Yoo-ji was already at his house, packing his belongings. Initially intending to scold Yoo-ji for his behavior, Ka-yoon ended up kissing him as a form of release. The next day, due to the hard work put in by Ka-yoon and Song-ae to change the label of the beauty product that was to be released that day, they finally succeeded. This led Ka-yoon to express appreciation for the hard work done by both Ka-yoon and Song-ae.
팀 일에 적극적으로 나선 거 잘했어요.
Ka-yoon was very grateful to Ka-yoon for taking the initiative to have such a brilliant idea. Ka-yoon also gave Ka-yoon the opportunity to participate in the company's new product idea competition representing their division, which is sweetly won every year by Song-ae. Hearing those words, Ka-yoon felt burdened as he was not yet on the same level as his senior. However, not wanting to disappoint Song-ae, who had been mentoring him all this time, Ka-yoon worked hard to win the competition held by the company. With the help of 2 friends, Ka-yoon tried to come up with a new product idea that had never been released before. However, all the ideas Ka-yoon had were, in fact, already created by Song-ae, which was quite frustrating because he didn't have his own original idea yet. Since today is a holiday, he intended to browse beauty products sold at the mall. He wanted to find references for the new product idea competition at his company, where Ka-yoon unexpectedly saw Song-ae hanging out with a friend. When the 2 of them met, they both displayed awkwardness, which made Song-ae's friend realize that there was something different between them.
안녕.
Song-ae's friend took the initiative to invite Ka-yoon to join them for a meal. and he left as soon as the food arrived to give Kayun and Song-ae some time alone. When Song-ae and Kayun were alone, the awkwardness between them returned. Song-ae even wondered to herself why she felt so awkward around Kayun. And as the two of them were walking together, from a distance, Song-ae saw one of her co-workers from the company who was walking towards them. To avoid becoming the subject of office gossip, Song-ae immediately grabbed Kayun's hand and surprised him by running together. The initial awkwardness between them suddenly disappeared and was replaced with smiles. Since it was already late, Kayun escorted Song-ae to her residence. In that moment, whether because she felt comfortable or there was already a spark of love, Song-ae thanked Kayun. Thanks to Kayun, she didn't feel too heartbroken, a result that would later be caused by Taeheesun.
겁내기도 휘둘리기도 싫은데
Song-ae also apologized for her past harsh words that she shouldn't have said. Kayun, upon hearing this, responded that he actually felt guilty because he once had the intention to take advantage of the bad situation between Song-ae and Jae-sun. Moreover, he also intended to steal Song-ae's heart. However, after hearing Song-ae's words rejecting him again, Kayun decided to abandon that intention and will try his best to make Song-ae see and feel that he is truly sincere with his feelings. As a first step, Kayun asked Song-ae not to avoid him anymore like she did before. Song-ae, upon hearing this, could only remain silent.
더 각오했었어요.
Jae-sun, having decided to accept Hyun as his wife, tries to understand Hyun by going out together. Another problem arises in Jae-sun's life as his materialistic father is starting to contact him to ask for money.
이 자식은 왜 전화를 안 받아?
Even though, from the beginning, his father never took care of or tried to find out about Jae-sun. Meanwhile, after patiently waiting for several days, Jae-sung, the one who captured his heart, returned to the mall owned by Jae-sun. In the end, Jae-sun's patience paid off because Jae-sung, who already had feelings for him, appeared, where with the financial power that Jae-won possessed. Jae-won immediately invited Jae-sung to have dinner together. The scene shifted back to Jae-sun, who was constantly receiving phone calls from his father. Fed up with the situation, Jae-sun went straight to his biological father and asked how much money he wanted so that the man would stop contacting him.
아니, 그쪽이랑 저 완전히 남될 수 있어요.
Unexpectedly, Jae-sun's father was actually pleased with the offer. He even mentioned the exact amount he wanted. Not wanting to be bothered by his father anymore, Jae-sung immediately sent the money and left the place. With his emotions in turmoil, Jae-sun ended up going to Song-ae's place. However, there, Jae-sun saw that Song-ae had moved on from him as she was always smiling while reading messages from someone who turned out to be Jae-sun.
걱정돼서 묻는 거예요.
On the other hand, Jae-sun's father, who had just been given a substantial amount of money, unexpectedly showed up at Yoo-ju's workplace. He ended up asking Yoo-ju for money, and it turned out Yoo-ju already knew all about Jae-sun's father being a criminal and his gambling habits. Just like Jae-sun, Yoo-ju also set conditions for Jae-sun's father, along with a threat to ensure that the man would no longer disrupt Jae-sun's life. The next day, at the office, Jae-sun, who had already decided to let go of Song-ae completely, brought up the issue of Song-ae's refusal to go to Paris again. For that reason, Jae-sun asked Song-ae to be patient because they would soon be busy together looking for a replacement candidate for Song-ae. Jae-sun said that he would no longer involve personal matters when he was with Song-ae until, without them realizing it, when the awaited live broadcast opened, Yoo-ju was there and immediately thought negatively and became very jealous upon seeing Jae-sun together with Song-ae. Yoo-ju, who was very overprotective of Jae-sun, with a very angry expression, immediately glared sharply at Song-ae, and just as she was about to speak harshly, Jae-yeon suddenly stepped in and took Song-ae's hand to leave the place.
가요 선배.
Jae-yeon's actions made Yoo-ju, who was very jealous, hold back from confronting Song-ae because she assumed that Song-ae was Jae-yeon's girlfriend. Meanwhile, Song-ae was very grateful to Jae-yeon for helping her out of Yoo-ju's misunderstanding, but Jae-yeon's action of holding Song-ae's hand was seen by one of their co-workers, which made Jae-yeon worried and led him to bribe his co-worker to keep what he saw a secret.
안 돼! 안 대리님.
Meanwhile, another love story, that of Jaeyoung and Jisung, shows a relationship that is growing closer. With all the influence he has, Jaeyoung is always ready at his mall, which Jisung often visits. Meanwhile, Jisung seems to be hypnotized by Jaeyoung, as Jisung always remembers Jaeyoung's antics trying to get his attention. Unlike the complicated relationship between Jaeyoung and Sang-ae, the love relationship between these two can be said to be very smooth, because now, Jaeyoung is even holding Jisung's hand, indicating that they are officially dating. Back to Jaeyoung, who is with Sang-ae. When their relationship has just started to form, suddenly a beautiful girl approaches Jaeyoung. However, Jaeyoung tries to ignore the girl, as if she had made a mistake in the past.
진짜 너 맞았네?
Sang-ae, who was seeing Ka-yoon's expressions so upset for the first time, didn't dare to ask about it, and tried to cheer Ka-yoon up by inviting him to talk about his college days. However, Ka-yoon, who was already influenced by the drinks, made Sang-ae feel awkward again because he rested his face below Sang-ae's. On the way home from work, Ka-yoon, who was with Sang-ae, was approached again by a girl who seemed insistent on wanting to talk to him alone. Initially, Ka-yoon tried to ignore the girl because he no longer wanted to deal with her. However, when the girl said she would keep meeting Ka-yoon until he agreed to talk to her, Ka-yoon had no choice but to resolve the matter with her. The beautiful girl was none other than Ka-yoon's ex-girlfriend, whom he had once told Sang-ae about. The girl apparently wanted to get back together with Ka-yoon because she felt that choosing her affair was the wrong decision.
너무 뻔뻔하긴 하지.
Of course, Ka-yoon immediately rejected the girl because he no longer had any feelings for her. Meanwhile, Sang-ae at home kept thinking about Ka-yoon, who was talking to his ex at that time. Sang-ae now seemed to feel jealous, which made her gather the courage to invite Ka-yoon to meet under the pretense of having dinner.
지금까지 저녁도 못 먹고.
The next day, upon learning that Ka-yoon rejected the woman who was always looking for him, she unknowingly smiled happily, indicating that Sang-ae already had feelings for Ka-yoon. However, Ka-yoon, who already felt burdened by his feelings for Sang-ae, decided at that moment to give up on his feelings. Ka-yoon said that, starting tomorrow, he would try to distance himself from Sang-ae so that his heart could move on quickly.
이제 진짜 마음 접어볼게요.
Hearing that, Sang-ae immediately looked down, unable to respond to anything Ka-yoon said. Even when she got home, Sang-ae kept thinking about what Ka-yoon had just said, which made her lose focus because she didn't know what to do. At the office, it turned out that Ka-yoon really did distance himself from Sang-ae, and even the sweet demeanor he usually showed was no longer there. Sang-ae felt like she had lost something very precious to her, which kept making her heart uneasy and uncomfortable during the small celebration held by her colleagues. A few days later, by coincidence, Sang-ae and Ka-yoon were assigned a task together. Ka-yoon's continued indifference towards Sang-ae finally became too much for her to bear, prompting Sang-ae to approach Ka-yoon without hesitation and tell him that she could no longer stand their sudden distance. Moreover, Sang-ae now feels empty since Ka-yoon no longer acts sweetly or shows any concern towards her. Sang-ae asked Ka-yoon to return to being attentive and behave as he used to, as she had been eagerly waiting for that. Ka-yoon also didn't expect Sang-ae to say something so honest. Initially, he remained silent, afraid of misinterpreting Sang-ae's words. But when they were heading home, Sang-ae spoke again, asking Ka-yoon for time to convince her heart about the feelings she now has for him. Is it true love or just a feeling of comfort?
그런다는 거잖아.
At home, Ka-yoon often smiles to himself out of sheer happiness, especially now that the opportunity to win Sang-ae's heart is wide open, as Sang-ae has started to feel the same way. Meanwhile, Sang-ae, who is with her friend, receives advice from her friend, because foolishly, Sang-ae almost let go of a man as good and handsome as Ka-yoon. Her friend also suggests that Sang-ae be more aggressive and let go of her shyness and pride, if she doesn't want to lose Ka-yoon. Sang-ae's office colleague, who is usually indifferent, now turns around and pays attention to Ka-yoon by making him his favorite coffee. This makes Ka-yoon very enthusiastic about winning the competition. At that time, the idea and concept that Ka-yoon presented in front of the company executives were very comprehensive, and it even seemed that everyone liked Ka-yoon's idea. Not long after, his colleagues who were waiting for the competition results were ultimately proud. because Kayun managed to become the champion. Song A, who heard about it, actually wanted to congratulate Kayun, but since they were still in the office environment, Song A could only give a gesture to Kayun for his success. When the two of them went home, it was clear they had grown close again, just like before. Jaehyun tried to tease Song A and asked her to fix his hair, while congratulating her for winning the competition. Song A attentively complied with Jaehyun's request, until she realized that Jaehyun had worked hard to win the competition. It turned out that Jaehyun had a fever that night, and Song A took the initiative to take him home. After they parted ways, Song A still felt worried, so she decided to buy medicine at the pharmacy. However, when she arrived at Jaehyun's house, a feeling of unease began to envelop Song A's heart because Jaehyun didn't open his door. Song A tried to help the man she was starting to like by applying a cold compress. While saying that, she was very worried seeing Jaehyun sick like this. Not long after, thanks to the care and compress from the woman he admired, Jaehyun's fever quickly subsided. When Jaehyun woke up, he saw that Song A was asleep on his sofa. Feeling happy about everything he experienced, Jaehyun tried to cover Song A with a blanket. As if responding to Jaehyun's presence, Song A immediately woke up from her sleep. She then touched Jaehyun's forehead to check if his fever had gone down.
열은
많이 걱정했어요?
Without hesitation, Jaehyun expressed his feelings by promising Song A that he would show her the true beauty of love if she accepted his feelings. Song A, still unsure, didn't respond to Jaehyun's words and immediately went to get some medicine. Seeing Song A's shy expression actually made Jaehyun smile. Meanwhile, unlike Jaehyun and Song A, who were in a romantic mood, problems returned to Jae-sin, as his father came to his office, making Jae-sin feel embarrassed, because his father was shouting like a madman. Jae-sin, who was fed up with his father's behavior after being given money, firmly asked him to keep his promise to stay out of his life. However, it turned out that Jae-sin's father's visit this time was not to ask for money, but to inform Jae-sin that he had found a biological mother Jae-sin had never known about. At that time, Jae-sin's father said that he would keep his promise, especially since he had also received much more money from Youngju. After meeting Jae-sin, the father, who had many debts, was seen being chased by two men. It turned out that even though Jae-sin's father had a lot of money, his greed was still a problem. He once ran away and refused to pay the two people who kept chasing him. Not long after, Jae-sin received a call from the police, asking him to come to the hospital immediately, because it turned out that Jae-sin's father was in critical condition. Upon arriving at the hospital, Jae-sin did not know why his father was suddenly hospitalized, so he asked the police about it. The police explained that Jae-sin's father was hit by a car, while being chased by someone demanding he pay a debt. Not long after, Jae-sin saw that his father, who had always been cruel, finally passed away. This became a harsh wake-up call for Jae-sin, who, despite his father's shameful behavior and actions, felt guilty and a sense of loss. Not long after, Jo-eun and Young-chung came to offer their condolences. Seeing Jae-sin in deep sorrow, Young-chung tried to comfort him by suggesting they work together to arrange Jae-sin's father's funeral. However, with a cold demeanor, Jae-sin rejected Hyoju's request and said that his father was someone unworthy of Hyoju's attention, who came from a respectable family. Hyoju, upon hearing this, could only remain silent, but in his heart, he felt that Jae-sin still couldn't accept him as part of the family.
나 그냥 재신 오빠 옆에 있을래.
Meanwhile, Jae-sin, who initially acted tough, could no longer hold back his sadness when he recalled his harsh words to his father the last time they met. Until he came directly to the funeral ceremony, where, unlike his attitude towards Hyoju, Jae-sin seemed to have been waiting for his father's arrival, as Jae-sin, without hesitation, poured out his guilt to his father during his lifetime. Not long after, a police officer knocked on his door to hand over a bag belonging to Jae-sin's late father. When he tried to open the bag, he was met with a scolding from Jae-sin. This immediately made Hyoju surprised by the rude behavior Jae-sin began to show.
열어본다.
그냥 버리라고!
The scene shifts to Song-a's mother, who appears to be at the hospital. It turns out she has been diagnosed with cancer. However, it doesn't matter, as the mother doesn't want to inform Song-a about it, because their relationship is currently strained. Meanwhile, at the office, Song-a receives a call from her mother, informing her that she is already at Song-a's house because she is suffering from cancer. Of course, hearing this made Song-a very shocked. Song-a is actually very worried about her mother's condition and immediately contacts the doctor who previously treated her mother. It is known that her mother's illness has not yet reached a severe stage and can be cured with surgery. However, at that time, Song-a's mother did not want to undergo it for various reasons. Song-a, who still couldn't accept her mother because of past bad events, was forced to persuade her, and the two ended up in an argument due to their differences in opinion. The relationship between them, which was already strained, now became even more distant.
너한테 좀 의지한 게 그렇게 큰 잘못이야?
Song-a, frustrated with her mother's stubbornness, then left the house and entrusted her mother to a friend's care. Unexpectedly, Song-a's steps led her to Ka-yoon's house, where Ka-yoon, seeing Song-a suddenly arrive, tried to ask about the problem she was currently facing. However, out of pride or embarrassment, Song-a made an excuse, saying she came to Ka-yoon's house to invite her to buy ice cream. But Ka-yoon, who is very sensitive to people's expressions, immediately hugged Song-a gently. Receiving such attention, Song-a couldn't hold back her tears in Ka-yoon's embrace. Until after her tears stopped, deep down Song-a was sure that the person in front of her was the one she truly loved. Without hesitation, Song-a directly expressed her feelings to Ka-yoon, which made him very happy, as this was the moment he had been eagerly waiting for.
좋아해.
Ka-yoon immediately hugged Song-a tightly, as if the embrace conveyed his sincere feelings. Knowing that Song-a was having issues with her mother, Ka-yoon then offered her warm tea and held her hand to calm her down a bit. The next day at the office, one of Song-a's co-workers, noticing that she didn't come to work, tried to ask other colleagues about it. But Ka-yoon innocently replied that Song-a took leave to accompany her mother, who was often sick. Ka-yoon's answer, of course, immediately made everyone turn to him, wondering how Ka-yoon could know about Song-a's situation. This made Ka-yoon suddenly nervous, as he didn't want his romantic relationship with Song-a to be revealed. Fortunately, an incoming phone call immediately diverted the situation.
아, 잠시만요.
During the break, like someone who is in love, Ka-yoon, who was with his co-workers, immediately ran to a quiet place when Song-a called him. Ka-yoon immediately expressed his longing to Song-a, even though it had only been a day since they last met. Song-a smiled when she realized that Ka-yoon was very smitten with her. Meanwhile, another couple who is happy, none other than Jo-eun and Ji-sung, are currently having their relationship tested. If Jo-eun wants to be serious with Ji-sung, he must win over Ji-sung's child's heart as a condition to move forward towards marriage. Of course, Jo-eun, who is serious and wants to marry Ji-sung, confidently tries wholeheartedly to win over the little one. Although initially, the little one seemed unwilling to accept Jo-eun's presence. With Jo-eun's persuasion and wealth, ultimately, in the end, the little one accepted his mother marrying Jo-eun.
우리 이모 많이 좋아해요?
많이 좋아해.
Meanwhile, Song-a, who is getting ready to take her mother to the hospital, accidentally finds letters that her mother had kept, and eventually she learns that her mother actually knew that her late husband had once had an affair. However, because her mother was afraid it would have a negative impact on Song-a, the woman always tried to keep everything a secret, even keeping it hidden until her husband passed away. From there, the relationship between Song-a and her mother has been strained up to this point. As soon as he arrived at the office after work, Ka-yoon immediately went home, because he wanted to meet Song-a. And when that meeting happened, Ka-yoon immediately gave her his attention and even always tried to cheer Song-a up. Afterwards, Ka-yoon also didn't forget to visit the hospital to check on Song-a's mother. When they met, Won realized that the man Song-a brought along was her boyfriend. However, it didn't matter that Song-a didn't acknowledge her relationship with Ka-yoon in front of her mother.
선배 회사 후배 최현승이라고 합니다.
When night came, as Song-a was about to fall asleep, her mother asked about the past events involving her husband. Song-ah actually didn't want to discuss it anymore and asked her mother to forget about it from now on, intending to start a new chapter in life. Her mother also explained the reasons for hiding many secrets, including her illness. A few days passed, and now Song-ah's mother was allowed to go home. However, when about to get into a taxi, her mother instead asked the driver to take her to her own house, because she didn't want to stay at Song-ah's house. Song-ah immediately understood that her mother was still upset about the argument from the previous night. At that time at her house, the mother vented her anger by destroying all the photos of her late husband. Because she felt that her husband's past mistakes were the reason for her strained relationship with Song-ah.
너무 힘들어, 엄마.
Meanwhile, Song-ah, who was still saddened by her increasingly tense relationship with her mother, was seen being taken for a walk by Jaein to enjoy the sea breeze. There, Song-ah didn't seem like her usual self. She often daydreamed, thinking about her increasingly chaotic relationship with her mother. Jaein tried his best to bring Song-ah's mood back to how it used to be. Although Jaein initially had some difficulty with his sincere attitude and knowing how to treat a woman, Jaein was able to make Song-ah smile again. Until that moment, a romantic atmosphere returned because, in the end, Jaein was able to kiss Song-ah. When it was time to rest, Jaein prepared to sleep in the car. Meanwhile, Song-ah slept in the tent. However, Song-ah felt uneasy and asked Jaein to sleep in the tent with her instead. In that moment, Song-ah, who was used to speaking formally to Jaein, asked him to call her by her real name. Even though this made both of them feel awkward because they weren't used to it.
연승아.
As the night grew progressively later, in the quiet of the night, while gazing at Song-ah's face, Jaein began to vividly imagine again that the happiness he was currently feeling was once just a distant dream. But now, all his dreams have come true in his life, and Jaein then felt like he was the happiest person. After spending time with Song-ah yesterday, he is now seen with his two older siblings. Because Jaesung, the eldest sibling, wanted to share happy news with his younger siblings, which is that now, he is in a serious relationship with a man. Upon hearing this, Jaesung's words were initially taken as a joke. Because all this time, Jaesung has been the type of woman who is picky and never wanted to settle down. However, seeing Jaesung's very serious expression, Jaein and his sibling were very happy and asked about the man who could win Jaesung's heart.
누군데?
언제부터?
나이는?
뭐 하는 사람인데?
After receiving the happy news from his sibling, Jaein was beaming and always smiled in front of Song-ah, which made Song-ah also feel the aura of happiness radiated by his partner. However, Song-ah still asked Jaein to keep their romantic relationship discreet in front of their office colleagues.
내가 안 들키게 좀 더 노력해야겠다.
In an attempt to keep the relationship discreet, Song-ah acted overly casual towards Jaein, which only made their co-workers more suspicious about their relationship. Then another problem arose, when the product idea that Jaein read during the competition was instead taken by another division, and that division planned to release it first. Of course, Jaein was upset, because he believed it would be detrimental to his division. Moreover, the idea was the result of his hard work over several days.
저희랑 같은 달에 출시 예정이시던데 시기만 조금...
However, when seeking guidance from Jaein, who was responsible for all divisions, Jaein couldn't offer much help. Especially since the division that took Jaein's product idea was already in the marketing stage. This left Jaein feeling troubled, as he felt that his hard work was only being used by others. However, when requesting a policy from Jae-won, who is responsible for all divisions, Jae-won couldn't be of much help. Especially because the division that presented Jaein's product idea is already in the marketing stage. This also stirred feelings of unease, as he felt that his work was only being used by others. The next day, Jaein had an idea to still release his product, even though another division was marketing it first by making the product exclusive and only giving it as a gift to cosmetic buyers. Hearing Jaein's new idea, Sung-hyun immediately agreed. While at the office together with Sung-ah to work on the new idea, they unconsciously drifted into a romantic world like a couple. This was noticed by Sung-yun, which immediately startled Sung-ah and Jaeyoon. Elsewhere, Young-koo appeared to be seemingly troubled, feeling that lately Jae-hyun had been acting distant towards her, and Jae-hyun never answered her phone calls.
이 나쁜 새끼.
Jae-hyun still couldn't move on from his father's death. Now, he is even trying to find out about his biological mother from the last words of his father. In a certain place, Jae-hyun is searching for the whereabouts of his biological mother. He finds a middle-aged woman who has the exact same features as the photo in his father's wallet. However, at that moment, Jae-hyun didn't dare to greet her and just walked away. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun now musters the courage to visit his biological mother's place. It turns out, Jae-hyun's mother had known from the beginning that Jae-hyun was her biological son. However, Jae-hyun has to face a bitter reality, as the woman asks him not to come again and never considers herself as his mother.
어린 것도 후회 안 해. 그러니까 다시는 찾아오지 마.
Meanwhile, after experiencing the bad incident of hearing harsh words from his mother, Jae-hyun is now seen with Youngju. The two of them are looking at the new house they will live in after getting married. Without Jae-hyun's knowledge, his confidant instructed someone to move Jae-hyun's personal belongings to their new home. This was done because lately Jae-hyun has still been sad after losing his father. So they wanted Jae-hyun to have a new environment. However, the good initiative taken by Yeoju actually made Jae-hyun furious. Jae-hyun immediately scolded Yeoju for not discussing anything before making a decision.
그럼 나랑 먼저 상의를 하든가 이렇게 통보하지 말고.
Yeoju, who felt that his kindness and attention were not appreciated at all by Jae-hyun, immediately poured out all his feelings, saying that he felt everything he did was always wrong in Jae-hyun's eyes. And even, Yeoju was never considered a partner. Hearing this, Jae-hyun became even more emotional and said that the relationship between them was never sincere from the start, as he was willing to get close and marry Yeoju because of pressure from Jae-won. Because if not, Yeoju would also try to commit suicide by drinking poison.
우리 사이가 정상 아닌 거 너도 잘 알잖아.
Yeoju, hearing this, became even more furious and said that if Jae-hyun really didn't want to marry her, then just end this relationship. From that moment on, Jae-hyun decided to break up with Yeoju. Yeoju could only cry and feel desperate, as she never expected Jae-hyun would dare to say such a thing. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun, after his argument with Yeoju, seemed to be contemplating something. Because if his relationship with Yeoju ended, he would have to leave the company immediately. Considering that he was never liked by Yeoju's brother from the start. All this time, only Yeoju and Jae-won were the sole reasons Jae-hyun could stay at the company.
내 동생 그냥 네가 좀 받아주라.
The next day, when Jae-won arrived at the office, he was very shocked to see Jae-hyun's resignation letter. He intended to contact his friend, but his phone number was no longer active. Jae-won then contacted Yeoju to inquire about the issue that had occurred. Yeoju, who just found out that Jae-hyun had resigned, immediately went to Jae-hyun's place. However, there, Yeoju did not find the presence of the man, and his suspicion was confirmed that Jae-hyun had decided not to live under the shadow of his family anymore. One day, Yeoju, filled with anger, went straight to the office to ask Song-ah about Jae-hyun's whereabouts. Shouting loudly, Yeoju demanded that Song-ah tell him where the man he loved so much was.
어딨냐고 이 자식!
Song-ah, who doesn't want to get involved in Jae-sin and Hyoju's affairs, tries to avoid them and says that she has nothing to do with Jae-sin at all, but Hyoju continues to insult her and attempts to act aggressively. Kayun, seeing this, immediately steps in to protect her beloved. Fortunately, Ju-won arrives and tells Hyoju to stop her actions.
이효주!
Girlfriend again. Afterward, Song-ah, who is still in shock from being confronted by Hyoju, is calmed down by Kayun, who is always holding her hand. Meanwhile, Ju-won, who doesn't know the reason why Hyoju confronted Song-ah, tries to ask about it the next day. At that point, Song-ah tells Ju-won everything. In the past, she did have a relationship with Jae-sin, but now that relationship is over. Goes in to express his gratitude.
뭔가 오해를 좀
Ju-won, who just learned the facts, can only apologize to Song-ah. As a result of that incident, Song-ah has now become a topic of gossip among her coworkers. They consider Song-ah to be a homewrecker in the relationship between Jae-sin and Hyoju. Kayun, knowing that Song-ah is bothered by her coworkers' comments, tries her best to keep Song-ah happy in her own way. Song-ah, realizing how much effort Kayun puts into making her happy, feels grateful to have someone like Kayun who is always by her side. The next day, The romantic relationship between Kayun and Song-ah seems to be tested again, as Song-ah receives an offer from her former co-worker to reconsider her decision to decline the move to Paris. According to her co-worker, Sona is the perfect person for that position. Unfortunately, this has been Song-ah's dream for a long time.
같이 일하면 좋을 것 같은데.
Once again, Song-ah tries to decline the offer because she feels her life is already happy with Kayun. Meanwhile, Kayun eventually finds out that his co-worker has been pretending not to know about his romantic relationship with Song-ah all along. This makes him grateful and thankful to have such a considerate co-worker. Kayun then informs Song-ah about it, but Song-ah instead brings up another issue regarding her co-worker's offer about moving to Paris. She asks for Kayun's honest opinion on the matter. Not wanting to feel like a burden, Kayun says that he will support whatever decision Song-ah chooses.
이직이 더 좋다고 판단되면 저도 적극 찬성이요.
Meanwhile, Hyoju, who still can't find Jason's whereabouts, begs her brother to do everything possible to find Jason as soon as possible. Initially, Juwon doesn't want to comply with Song-ah's request, but when Hyoju keeps crying and says she can't live without Jason, Juwon promises to find Bria's whereabouts as soon as possible. Juwon, who is trying to get Jason back to the office, does not approve Jason's resignation letter. Unfortunately, he receives a direct reprimand from his grandfather, who orders Juwon to sever ties with Jason. Because now the company must keep moving forward, especially with the project progressing very slowly.
그렇게 물러 터졌으니까 이렇게 뒤통수를 맞지?
Having no choice, Juwon decides to promote Sung-yoon to replace Jason. He also announces that starting today, Jason is no longer part of the company. Hearing this, Song-ah, who once had a close relationship with Jason, feels worried about her ex-boyfriend's condition. Song-ah then asks Juwon about Jason's whereabouts, but Juwon says that he still hasn't been able to contact Jason.
혹시 재신이한테 연락 안 왔죠?
Juwon also asks Song-ah for help to inform him if Jason contacts her at any time. Juwon apologizes because he was completely unaware of the relationship that once existed between Song-ah and Jason. He also said that the decision to transfer Song-ah to Paris was not due to pressure from Jason, but purely because Song-ah is very talented and it would be a shame to waste her abilities. In short, a few days passed, and at Kayun's office, a new employee arrived to replace her, because now Kayun has been promoted to replace Song-ah's position, while Song-ah herself has been promoted to replace Sung-yeon's previous position.
우리 현승이가 회사에 온 지가 엊그제 같은데요.
Upon receiving the news, Kayun was very excited to be able to mentor the new employee, just like what Paina Song had done for her. However, it turned out that the new employee had much broader skills and knowledge in the world of cosmetics. Kayun then felt useless as a senior. Nevertheless, in the end, with the attitude she always showed to her junior, that person appreciated everything that Kayun had taught.
같이 먹어요, 그럼. 네. 감사합니다, 선배님.
Afterwards, Kayun introduced Song-ae to her niece, where, like Juwon before, she had to win over the little one's heart. It turned out that this also applied to Song-ae, if she wanted her relationship with Kayun to become more serious. However, unlike Juwon, who had to struggle more to win over Kayun's niece, Song-ae was immediately accepted and even became close with the child. They even looked like a married couple who already had a child.
삼촌이 좀 하잖아.
Hyun introduced Song-ae to her two older siblings. Si-sung was very open and welcomed Song-ae warmly, because she knew that Kayun was very happy when she was in a romantic relationship with Song-ae. Afterwards, when Kayun was about to take Song-ae home, it turned out that at her house, Kayun was already waiting for Song-ae's arrival, because she wanted to have a private conversation with the girl. Initially, Kayun did not give permission to Kayun, but when she saw Song-ae asking for trust, Kayun then gave permission to Jason to talk with her girlfriend. Jason's purpose in meeting Song-ae was none other than because she felt she hadn't sincerely apologized for her actions of betraying Song-ae. Jason also wanted to say goodbye because she was going to start a new life somewhere and open a small cosmetics business.
이 말은 꼭 너한테 직접 해주고 싶었어.
After saying her farewell, Jason left Song-ae. Meanwhile, at home, Hyun was pacing back and forth because he was worried that something might happen to Song-ae. When Song-ae arrived home and opened the door, Hyun immediately hugged his partner and they kissed. The romantic relationship between Hyun and Song-ae seems to be tested again, as Song-ae is now starting to get busy with work matters. Even her mother, who came to the office, couldn't meet Song-ae because she was out on a business trip at that time. Even until the evening, the mother continued to wait because she missed her daughter very much. Hyun, who happened to have just returned, saw Song-ae's mother in the office lobby. At that moment, Hyun immediately greeted her and invited the mother to go home with him. During the journey, the mother, who didn't know much about her daughter's busy schedule, tried to ask Hyun about it.
근데 원래 이렇게 외근이 많아요?
Hyun explained that Song-ae is a hard worker because of her excellent performance. Wanting to get closer to Song-ae's mother, Hyun tried to invite her to have a meal together, while discussing Song-ae, about whom her mother didn't know much.
아무래도 가까운 편이죠. 사수, 부사수니까요.
It was evident that he was trying to get closer to his future mother-in-law. With Hyun's kindness, it was clear that Song-ae's mother was immediately won over, feeling that Hyun was a very good man and a perfect match for Song-ae.
좋다는 여자 많죠. 이렇게 다정하니.
Even when returning home, Song-ae's mother was very grateful to Hyun, whom she considered a rare man because of his kindness and sincerity. On the other hand, Song-ae was having a conversation with a former colleague who had just returned from Europe. Her colleague was very eager for Song-ae to follow in her footsteps and go to Paris. The woman tried to share her experiences there, with the aim of making Song-ae reconsider her decision to decline the company's offer. She also mentioned that if Song-ae went to Paris with her representing the company, Song-ae would face challenges and gain experiences there that she would never get in Korea.
위로 올라갈수록 아쉬워하기는 해.
Hearing her colleague's words, Song-ae now seemed to start doubting her decision to decline. Like the day she met in Bali, Song-ae appeared deep in thought as she began to doubt her decision to move to Paris. Jae-yoon, who still didn't know what Song-ae was feeling, instead told Song-ae about his future desire to always be with her at every Muslim celebration.
난 선배랑 사계절 다 느껴보고 싶어.
Song-ae could only remain silent and not respond to Hyun's words when she heard them until when Hyun kept expressing his desire to be with Song-ae, Song-ae simply replied that she really liked Hyun. The next morning, Hyun was seen meeting Ju-sung because Ju-sung wanted to inform him that he was already dating someone who was none other than Jae-won, the boss of the company where Hyun works. Hyun was unexpectedly surprised because he didn't expect that, but he didn't want to receive any kind of special treatment at work at all, so Hyun asked his brother not to reveal that he was Ju-sung's brother. When he accidentally got an assignment with Song-ae, he saw a document about Song-ae being transferred to Paris, but he couldn't explain anything yet because they were still very busy. Hyun asked to discuss it after their work was finished. Both of them seemed to be in an awkward situation, so Hyun asked about the document he had just seen. Song-ae then said that she was still deciding on the final decision, and that's why she couldn't discuss it with Hyun at that moment.
거면 괜히 현승 씨까지 신한해할 필요 없잖아.
Hyun, noticing that Song-ae indeed wanted to go to Paris, then asked how long Song-ae might stay there if she really had to go. Song-ae replied that if she decided to go, she would choose to stay for 5 years. Hyun could only remain silent because deep down he really hoped that Song-ae would never leave him.
아니 아무리 그래도 5년은 좀...
Until the moment of seeing Song-ae off, it was clear that the two of them were no longer as close as they used to be. Meanwhile, Hyun, who kept thinking about his relationship with Song-ae, then mustered the courage to express what he believed could make him happy. He then approached Song-ae and immediately said that he hoped Song-ae wouldn't leave, but Hyun's sincere wish did not align with Song-ae's desires. As it turned out, Song-ae had firmly decided to go to Paris. Switching to Jason, who was waiting for Jae-won after not seeing each other for a long time. At that meeting, Jae-won immediately hit Jason, feeling that Jason didn't consider him a friend at all. If his purpose in meeting Jae-won was because he wanted to break free from the ties that had been binding him, upon hearing those words, Jaewon's face showed true anger and fury. Jaewon then said that, from now on, he would do everything in his power to prevent anything Jason would try to do. Jaewon then visited Hyun at the hospital, who still looked weak because she had been unwell since Jason left. Jaewon apparently already knew that there was no hope left for his sister to live with Jason, so he asked his sister to move on from Jason's shadow.
이젠 그래도 그 자식이 너 안 봐줘.
On the other hand, Jason, who heard the news that Hyun was in the hospital because of him, went to meet his ex-girlfriend. Jason's visit was to tell her directly about his decision, that he would never see Hyun again. He hoped that Hyun could find a man better than him.
직접 보고 얘기하려고 왔어.
Hyun couldn't say anything and could only shed tears. After learning about Song-a's decision, Jaein, who truly cared for and loved the girl, finally gave in and let Kang Song-a go to Paris. However, with the condition that they would maintain their relationship, even if it had to be long distance. Jaein promised that every vacation he would come and make time to meet his beloved. Even though he was at home, Jaein was very devastated by the decision Song-a made. However, at the office, Jaein tried not to show it in front of Song-a because he didn't want Song-a to feel burdened by him. Jaein chose to spend beautiful moments with Song-a, who would soon be leaving for Paris. Although in reality, it was very difficult to do because Song-a was very busy preparing for her move.
그냥 기다릴 테니까 편히 하고 와요.
알겠어.
Jaein, who always faithfully waited for Song-a until she finished her work, was seen falling asleep in the car. Seeing that, Song-a felt she could only apologize for her selfishness. This made Jaein promise to often make time on other days before Song-a's departure. In the remaining time they had, Jaein and Song-a tried to make the most of it by doing happy things together. In a short span of 3 years, Song-a has decided to return from Paris even though she still had 2 more years left there. Until at a crossroads in Korea, Song-a sees Kayun, but Kayun just ignores her, sparking curiosity about what happened between their relationship. It turns out that over the past 3 years, it is shown when Song-a recalls the incident that made Kayun despise her. Because when Song-a was working in Paris, Kayun actually always tried to maintain their romantic relationship by making time to visit. However, when Kayun came, Song-a was always busy with her work.
날짜가 조정하기가 어려울 것 같은데.
Even though they had previously made plans, Song-a ended up breaking them, making Kayun's efforts seem in vain. Even for the dinner they had agreed upon, Song-a still couldn't keep her promise. At that time, Kayun remained patient and tried to understand Song-a's busyness. Until one day, Song-a saw Kayun asleep in her apartment, no longer seeing the man, who always hoped and continuously waited for her. With a heavy heart, Song-a decided to end the romantic relationship with Kayun. Even though, in reality, Kayun insisted on keeping Song-a, the reason Kayun ignored Song-a was finally revealed.
여기까지만 하자, 우리.
At the office, Song-a, who had returned to work there after 3 years in Paris, found that Kayun still remained distant and only spoke to her for work-related matters. It seems to make Song-a feel uncomfortable, but that was the price she had to pay for her selfish decision to abandon Kayun. Song-a was placed in her old division, which was now led by Sung-hyun. This situation forced Song-a to see Kayun often, as their desks faced each other. However, unlike before, Kayun seemed indifferent to seeing his senior return to work in their division. Their co-workers even tried to matchmake the two, by always giving Kayun and Song-a time alone together. But it seemed very difficult, as Kayun always avoided those situations.
저 먼저 나가보겠습니다.
Meanwhile, Kayun and Jisung, after 3 years of being in a relationship, were busy with wedding preparations. Jisung had even become close with Hyeoju, and their closeness was like that of best friends. Hyeoju was even comfortable sharing her experiences about going on a blind date with someone she just met.
재수없는 건 여전하지.
Once upon a time, Yakima met Jae-sin, who was now establishing a small company not far from the world of cosmetics. All this time, Jae-sin has actually always failed to get sponsors because of Jaewon's actions, who always forbids all investors from helping Jae-sin. Meanwhile, Jae-sin, who is busy working to organize the company he is starting, receives news that his regular photo studio is having problems and cannot photograph Jae-sin's products. For that reason, his subordinate suggests a new photo studio, which turns out to be owned by Yoo-ju. Jae-sin inadvertently has to deal with his ex-girlfriend again, even though Yoo-ju has actually moved on and is now indifferent to Jae-sin.
뭐야? 설마 나 만나러 왔어?
Meanwhile, Jae-sin receives news at his office from his subordinate that the product photos taken at Yoo-ju's studio have immediately boosted their products because the quality of the studio's photos is excellent. Jae-sin, upon learning that the photo shoot was done personally by Yoo-ju, immediately contacts his ex-girlfriend to express his gratitude. Jae-sin also feels indebted because Yoo-ju has helped him a lot. Yoo-ju, who apparently still has feelings for Jae-sin, only asks him to treat her to a meal, to which Jae-sin agrees. And this could be the beginning of their relationship rekindling. She indeed still has feelings for Jae-sin, and after their last meeting, Yoo-ju always remembers it and keeps the umbrella that Jae-sin gave her. Back at the office, Jae-yoon and Sona are assigned a task to go to a mall together. They are surveying a newly released product, and after completing the task, Sona tries to invite Jae-yoon to have a meal together. However, Jae-yoon immediately declines the invitation and says goodbye. This makes Sona a bit upset, because ever since she returned to the office, Jae-yoon has always been cold towards her. Sona then goes out with her friends who are partying just to have a drink. To relieve stress, Sona deliberately drinks excessively, and when she arrives at a bus stop, unexpectedly, Jae-yoon sees Sona alone. Worried that something bad might happen to her, Jae-yoon immediately gets out of the car and intends to take Sona home. However, due to her condition being influenced by alcohol, Sona instead expresses her frustration when she sees Jae-yoon. The next morning, when Sona wakes up, she tries to remember what she said to Jae-yoon the night before. This makes her embarrassed and unable to look Jae-yoon in the eye when at the office. After enduring the embarrassment, Sona finally decides to approach Jae-yoon and apologize for what happened the night before. She also promises that, in the future she will try to manage those feelings so she won't feel awkward in front of Jae-yoon anymore. Not long after, Jae-yoon is approached by Jae-yoon, who now knows that Jisung is Jae-yoon's brother. Now, Jae-yoon and Jae-yoon also have a close relationship like siblings. Jae-yoon himself is already aware that Jae-yoon is not doing well after Song-a's return.
이번에 본 게 1년 만인가?
In short, when Jae-yoon was about to go home, he unexpectedly met Sona again in an elevator, and at that moment, the fire alarm suddenly went off, causing Sona to panic and immediately grab Jae-yoon's hand. She urged Jae-yoon to run to a safer place, but when Sona realized she was holding Jae-yoon's hand, she felt embarrassed and tried to avoid him. That silly incident actually made Jae-yoon afraid to laugh. The next day, when the elevator they were in was crowded, another moment of closeness occurred, because, due to the crowding in the elevator, Sona's face ended up pressed against Jae-yoon's body. At one point, they were assigned a task again, and because Jae-yoon was exhausted, he fell asleep in the car, which made Sona still have feelings for him, so she gently stroked his hair. However, it turned out that Jae-yoon was only pretending to sleep and immediately asked about Sona's actions just now. Jae-yoon, who still had feelings, then challenged Sona to try to flirt with him and make him fall in love. Hearing that, Sona felt challenged because she really wanted things to go back to how they used to be. Jae-yoon, who still had feelings, then tried to understand falling in love.
신경 안 쓰이게 한다면서요.
At home, Song-ae kept thinking about the kind challenge that made it hard for her to sleep. Sona then asked her friend for advice on how to win a man's heart. And it turned out that all the advice her friend gave was completely opposite to Song-ae's personality. However, since she no longer knew how to make Kyan fall in love with her, Song-ae had no choice but to do many things.
너 설마 현승 씨?
At the office, Song-ae tried to dress up and look as charming as possible to appear attractive in front of Kyan. And when it was just the two of them, Song-ae overcame her shyness by expressing words of love to Kyan. Now, Sona no longer concerns herself with what her colleagues say, because she always devotes her attention to helping Kyan with any and all matters at the office. Although it was embarrassing, because Song-ae had never done it before, she now feels that her heart truly experiences happiness, and her mood instantly improves. This also affects Song-ae's relationship with her mother, which has now started to become harmonious. Meanwhile, Kyan is seen meeting Jisung to discuss Jisung's wedding, which is just days away. There, Jisung also learns about his brother's relationship with Song-ae, which is still stagnant. He then tries to ask if Kyan's feelings are okay, to which Kyan confides that he was actually very happy when he found out that Sona returned to Korea. He even feels happy when Samye tries to get his attention, but deep down, his heart is still afraid to open up to Song-ae. Juin, who hears this, simply advises Kyan to follow his heart.
생각 좀 해보고 얘기해줄게.
그래?
Kyan and Sona are appointed by Juin to hand out souvenirs at his wedding ceremony with Jisung. Sona and Kyan then meet Jisung to discuss this matter. Sona feels nervous because he feels guilty for neglecting Kyan all this time. Jisung gives advice to Sona about his brother's feelings, which are actually very fragile. Jisung hopes that Sona can reassure Kyan if he truly loves him.
더 주춤하게 되는 것 같아요.
Sona finally resolves to talk about his feelings to Kyan and apologize for having hurt him in the past. However, now if Kyan is willing to accept Sona back, she promises never to do anything foolish like before that made Kyan sad. Hearing Sona's words, Kyan becomes even happier and kisses him. They begin to feel happiness, as every day is now filled with joy, and they no longer hide their romantic relationship from everyone, including their co-workers at the office. Kyan now just needs to discuss something with Song-ae's mother so that their relationship can move to a more serious level. Of course, Song-ae's mother, who has liked Kyan from the beginning, immediately approves of her daughter's relationship.
아, 나 현석 씨 없으면 안 돼. 못 살아.
Meanwhile, Jason and Hyoju also seem to be getting closer now. Now Jason can smile when he's with Hyoju. Afterward, Jason meets with Jaewon again, where their initially strained relationship has now started to mend. Jaewon finally realizes that Jason has been struggling on his own all this time to be on the same level as him and worthy of being called a friend. The scene shifts to Song-ae, who meets Jasun again, where the curiosity expressed by Jasun encourages Song-ae to muster the courage to express her feelings to Kyan.
같이 해주셔서 감사합니다. 잘 부탁드릴게요.
Song-ae, who is overjoyed, immediately contacts Kyan to meet him at a crosswalk. At that moment, Song-ae, still remembering Kyan's wish that he once expressed, then invites him to go see the cherry blossoms in the spring. Kyan is seen opening his arms wide and immediately hugging Song-ae tightly, and the film ends.